Okay, today in court, we're definitely seeing why they let Oregon go first. You know, we were always wondering, like, what the heck, you know, Oregon happened so much later, yet when they were arrested, they went right into court and we had to wait like a year. And I truly believe they wanted to go to court in Oregon and figure out what their mistakes were. And I think one of their biggest mistakes was trying to hide evidence. They were trying to hide these things that the agents did. And it came out with the defense. The defense brought all that to light. So here in Nevada, they're trying to bring all of the stuff that they think we're going to bring up to light right away for us. So, you know, we go back into the video from the truck, and there's quotes on the video, and, you know, we all know that these quotes, you know, when they say things like, where the fuck is the sheriff? We've lost track of the people. They're joking. They say things like, shoot his dog first. It's a shoot first, ask questions later scenario. So what they did is the government pulled in a couple, and they may have messed with the video to make those other comments sound like it more in the background, but when we went into cross-examination, Leventhal did an amazing job bringing all that up. You know, this guy, who is the guy that's on the stand right now? I can't even remember his name, but he is the spotter, the guy that's announcing the guns on the radio. And he said he's in fear for his life the whole time, and then he made these comments because it was a way to alleviate the stress and the fear. And that was the comments like, where the hell is the sheriff? Where the fuck is the sheriff? And if there was something to the point of the protesters on the southbound bridge yelled, we're gonna come for you. And he said back, if you come for me, there'll be hell to pay, or something like that. And he says, you know, that's him, you know, alleviating the stress. They're joking, they're laughing about these evil things that they've said. In cross-examination, though, it was brought up, you know, here you are, you're supposedly in fear of your life, you're joking around, you're saying things like, see that fat guy over there? He's obviously not married. Other derogatory sentences, lots of cussing and laughing and talking about shooting people's dogs first. And so that was brought up, and I believe that the jury really didn't believe that, you know, he was in fear for his life at that moment. In cross-examination, things got a lot more heated. They brought up the memorandum of activity, and in his memorandum of activity, he did not put the picture of the four men in the truck in camo. There wasn't told who those people were. Not sure if they're in the indictment or not. There's a picture of a truck with four guys in camo in it. He later shows in the video that the four guys like have a little meeting and then split up, and two go up on the northbound side and two go up on the north side of the southbound, and two go up on the south side of the southbound, and that caused him to be fear for his life, although we don't know who those individuals are. So, you know, they could be in the indictment or they could not. I'm not familiar with who they are. They also talked about the National Park Set team and the fact that they were pointing weapons. And in the end, Leventhal or Engel said, you know, couldn't the people on the northbound bridge getting down behind the barrier, couldn't they be in fear for their life because they were pointing weapons at them? Because you say here, you're in fear for your life. Would you get down if you had a weapon pointed at you? How can you say that that's not what's going on there? And then he also can't tell anyone when they were pointing weapons, but he did see it at some time. Let's see. At one point, Todd Engel is up there, and he says, you stated that there was more than 20 long guns in the wash. And then he pulls up a video and he says, can you circle 20 people with guns on this picture? He could circle one person. So, you know, this whole time they're being like, there's so many guns, and they're calling out people with guns, with what they're wearing and where they're at. Another thing that I think that I heard is when they're playing this video and they're announcing what the people are wearing, they stop and say, where was that person? In the direct examination, he says there's a guy in camo with a light colored long gun, and he says that person's down in the wash. He then later identifies Stephen Stewart, although he doesn't say his name, but the picture is Stephen Stewart. He's not wearing camo. He has a green vest on that the guy then says, well, green or camo vest with a light long arm up on the bridge. Well, Steven Stewart never went down in the wash, so either he was talking about different people and falsely identified Steve, or he doesn't even know what he's talking about. Because, you know, to me that was not brought up in cross-examination. Let's see what else here. Engel also was able to get him to call them protesters based on his MOA. And he fought it for a while. He's like, no, not protesters. He's like, well, in your MOA, you did call them protesters, did you not? And so he said yes. And then he got him to call them protesters over and over again. So that was really good to hear. You know, just that pure fact of in your MOA, you called them protesters. Here in the courtroom, you call them gunmen or an individual with a gun. Also, if you believe that someone was in danger, are you going to do anything you can to protect yourself and others from that danger? And then he goes to, because this gentleman was also an undercover agent during the beginning under, I can't remember the second guy we saw, but where he was asked if there were metro in the Bunkerville area, not down in the wash, if that on the day prior, if there was metro in the bunker, or not the day prior, earlier in the morning, if there was metro in the Bunkerville area. And he tried to skirt that question a lot. There was lots of objections, but they were able to stick with it and finally get him to answer, and yes, there was. And then, and here, you know, Todd's arguing with the prosecution. I think it's Todd. Oh no, it was Perez. He's arguing with the prosecution, and he's saying, you know, this is what I'm trying to get to the question, and the objections are so intense by the government that we have a hard time even trying to get our questions out. I could even see the judge was getting frustrated with Nadia and with the defense at times, but you could definitely see she was getting more frustrated than I've ever seen her before. But yes, there was a metro in Bunkerville before they went down into the wash, and then he was asked, well, do you know how many? And he can't say. Well, was it more than 10? Yeah, more than 10. More than 20, and he couldn't say. So we're sitting somewhere between 10 and 20. It was under Michael Johnson. He's one of the undercover agents under Michael Johnson. Then Leventhal, he was asked at one point to evaluate that day in his life as to the second. What did he said the second most day to actual violence I have ever experienced in my life. Now, he's been in the military. They asked if he saw any war in the military, any combat, and he said no. And then he said that his first time was the Chicago shootings. Is that right?
No, Arizona
shootings. But it didn't go into what shooting. And so, but that was the second most day. So then Leventhal gets up and he says, okay, well, what day did you get there? And he says, I got there on April 3rd. And he starts asking, well, on April 4th, how would you rate that day? And he says, moderately stressful. And he's all, well, did you see long guns, gas masks, or German shepherds on that day? And the answer was no to all of those. Then the prosecution is objecting and the judge is kind of falling into this. She's like, gonna smash him on this. Well, that has nothing to do with the 12th. And Leventhal pulls out, well, we have an indictment, and our indictment covers all of these days. So for you to ask us in the courtroom to only focus on the 12th when you're allowed to focus on everything up to the 12th, that is not fair. And he was allowed to continue. And, you know, here she's getting more frustrated. I don't know if she's getting frustrated with the situation, with how the prosecution is just like badgering and throwing these objections in. I mean, at points, it got to the point where you couldn't tell who was talking because people were talking over each other. So then he's allowed, were you there the day Dave Bundy was arrested? And he says, no. And he says, so you weren't on the scene? He said, no. He's like, were you above the scene? And he says, yes. So that picture of the two people standing on the little hill behind you, which I guess you could technically say you weren't at the scene, which you pretty much were. So he was there. He was then asked if in a sit-down interview with FBI Michael Pratt if he was said he was a spotter for a sniper that day. That was objected to, and we did not hear the answer to that question. So that's important information. And then we went back to, you know, April 9th. How would you rate that day? Did you see long guns, gas masks, German shepherds, you know, going through this, and then the judge finally cuts him off. At one point, they put the video back on, and sheriff is asking for a command person in post 1. And they make sure that the jury hears that going out over the radio and the time that happened, because I believe that was around 11:30. And that's when you hear, then they go back and they play that little clip, because right after that comment, there's a very, very low comment where you can say this is pretty much a shoot first, ask questions later situation. And then the other guy goes, I'm with you, and they both laugh, ha ha ha. So at first he didn't hear it, they played it again, then he heard it, we had to play it again so that he could definitely hear it. I had a hard time hearing it the entire time. I'm sure the jury also had a hard time, but they actually did get that on the record. Also, they start playing it again, and then they're stop. Did you hear that? And that was shoot his fucking dog. Shoot his fucking dog. And so that was also brought in. Now, mind you, we watched this whole video. You couldn't hear those comments because they've either raised the, they've raised the level of some of the other comments, or on that recording it's not as legible. But we were able to pinpoint that. I can't remember who it was, but at some point he said that a protester threw a sign and a rock from Southbound Bridge. And this was about the time when Dan Love came and walked up to the gate. And he also said that there were protesters that tried to start taking the fence apart. And then he said tried to in the first direct, and in the examine and the cross direct, he said that they were able to, which is not true. You did not see in the video that they took a piece of that fence down. So he's changing his story by himself without even asking questions. That was also not brought up, the fact that he did say 2 contradicting statements. So in the government redirect, I can't remember who was redirecting, but they asked him if he took a picture of that rock, if they took that rock into evidence, or they fingerprinted that rock. So the government comes back, because obviously if it was a weapon, that would make sense. The government comes back and says, were you able to make any law enforcement act that day? Pretty much being in the fact that Metrocam made them leave and they could not take that rock into evidence. Then a lot of talk about why you didn't point your weapon at the crowd, having to do with children. They're bringing up the children. They said women and children, but then the witness himself changed the question to just children. And that's why they didn't point their weapons. Also, they didn't use pepper ball, because it could have been viewed as, or what was his exact words? If they did that, a war would break out. A war would break out. Todd Leventhal did amazing in his cross-examination. He got fiery. He's about frustrated with this whole situation and the way the judge is doing this, and he's not going to play a fair game anymore. Then let's talk about Jackson. Our lovable Mr. Jackson gets up to the stand, and he says, I mean, I can't even remember what his exact words were, but he's like, did you point your weapon at protesters? And he takes his little hands out, and he's pointing his gun at all the jury, and they're just laughing. And, we were so frustrated with him in the beginning, because he went on and he, basically tried to throw everyone under the bus. And the jury just loves him. He's like this sweet old guy. He reminds me of Colonel Sanders or somebody. And he's up there and he's making jokes about this guy's statement. Obviously you're scared for your life, and he's pointing his little hand weapon at everybody. And, that he was one of the ends, and it was just comical relief. If they were to go back and make a movie of this court, it's going to be a comedy, that's for sure.
We gotta have him in there. He's awesome.
So, it's definitely, I don't see how the jury could believe anything this guy has said. Him himself, without even people asking questions, has perjured himself by saying one thing and then saying the exact opposite. So, that's all I got.
Awesome.
Thank you.
And remember, he said he met with U.S. attorneys all day long, every day last week.
I forgot that. He met with the U.S. attorneys every day last week, and but he'd only viewed the video 3 times. And then he's met with the U.S. Marshals or the United States Office only 1 time prior to that, and the FBI 1 time prior to that. So, but every day last week, what does that say? And then I do not recall any questions that have any substance in them. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, thank you,
We'll
thank
be
you.
back to everybody tomorrow.
Alrighty, that's it.